the most memorable and powerful, profound, and holy experience of Jerry's and my lives has been the birth of our first child. Now, this was a long time ago. Derek turns 50 this year. Things were a little different back then, and yet that day feels like it was yesterday. Believe it or not, back in those days, dads were not allowed in the delivery room. Even though Lamaze was in and we had taken every class together, we had read every book and watched every video about childbirth. We thought we knew what to expect, that we were on top of it. Well, no. When labor started, it was so overwhelming that all of our preparations were out the window, and I was just hanging on to get through it. So Jerry was not there for the delivery, and they did not let me hold the baby as they do today. They just showed him to me and then whisked him away to clean him up and test him and do their thing. They took me to the recovery room, and Jerry was able to come in. And then, finally, they rolled Derek into the room in this bassinet, and we were able to really look at him for the first time. There are no words. It was indescribable. We were gazing at this unbelievable miracle with tears streaming down our faces. The nurse came in to check on us, saw us. She broke into tears, and we just all cried together. To this day, we cannot think about it without just wanting to fall to our knees at the amazing, amazing mystery of God and of life. I know that many of you may not have had that particular experience, and I've tried all week to think of something comparable to evoke that feeling in you, but everything I come up with just falls short. But I do hope that every one of you has had an experience like that. Something that just took your breath away at the wonder of God. Every third year, every year A in the lectionary cycle during Lent, we reflect on 4 stories from the Gospel of John. 4 encounters that Jesus has with 4 different people. With Nicodemus, with a Samaritan woman at a well, with a man born blind, and with Mary and Martha when their brother Lazarus dies. I think that those stories were stories that were taught in the early church to people preparing for baptism. We find ourselves in each of those encounters. And I think we find a lot of ourselves in Nicodemus. Nicodemus was a religious person. We're religious people. That's why we're here today. Nicodemus was spiritually open and curious. He was interested in learning. He had questions. We have questions. Jesus was a rabbi who was doing new and different things that he was trying to understand. The church today is doing a lot of new and different things, and our faith is evolving and changing. If you attended our recent adult formation series about the universal Christ, we were invited into a new and expanded way of thinking about Christ. There's a lot to get our minds around, a lot to try to understand. Like Nicodemus, we all want to grow and to deepen our faith. Nicodemus came to Jesus at night. Now, we assume that's because he wanted to keep their conversation private. We don't think that Nicodemus was ready to engage with his Pharisee colleagues or his neighbors about Jesus. There is a lot for us today in the 21st century that makes us tend to keep our faith private. In our increasingly pluralistic world, faith is seen as appropriate for our personal morality, but inappropriate for public issues. Our workplaces are filled with people from different traditions and backgrounds, and increasingly with some interfaith marriages, our own families are as well. We want to honor and respect the faith of others. We want others to respect us. We don't like people who proselytize. And so, between not wanting to offend and still sorting out what we actually believe for ourselves, we tend often to keep our faith private. My good friend, Deborah Kapp, who was a professor of ministry and actually the vice president for academic affairs at McCormick Seminary, writes about and loves to use for faith the metaphor of childbirth, sort of like Jesus in the gospel lesson today. She talks about this private kind of faith as gestating faith. Faith that is growing and developing in the warm coziness of the womb. And I think we can all relate to that. No matter what our age or our seminary experience, our faith is still forming and transforming. And we want to protect it. We want to nurture it while it grows. We want to keep it safe, though, from what's harmful, from what might challenge it or confront it. Jesus is encouraging Nicodemus to bring his gestating faith to life, to birth, to push it out into the world, into the light of day, where it can grow to greater maturity and where it can become fully alive. I think that also sometimes we want to keep our faith holy and pure. We don't want to get it dirty and tarnished with all the human muck in the world. We want to keep our faith above all of that. We'd sort of like to reserve it for Sunday. Reserve it where we can escape from the world and we can come and have some time to soak in goodness and peace. But God so loves the world, all of it, that in Jesus, God took on human flesh and came and lived in the world in the midst of all of that muck, with the poor, with the lame, with the powerless, with the ostracized. Jesus is inviting Nicodemus to experience a faith that is more than words in a book, more than teachings from a rabbi to ponder, more than comforting thoughts to cling to, more than dreams of what might be someday. Jesus is inviting Nicodemus to push his faith out from theory into practice, to give it flesh and bring it to life in the world. God is love. Love becomes real for us when we can touch it and hold it and experience it with real people in the world. Forgiveness and mercy become real and powerful when we practice them face to face with real people who have harmed us. Compassion becomes transforming when it becomes our way of life. There is an author and speaker who loves to say that God comes to us disguised as our lives. God is this infinite, transcendent mystery that is beyond our comprehension, that we yearn to know. And that God has made God's self known to us in everything that is around us, in every breath we take, in all of the stuff of life. God's words, Jesus' words to Nicodemus are words to us that we can wake up every day to that thrill and that wonder of new life if we will open our eyes and our hearts to the world that is around us.